Your right to privacy is not
I'm starting to worry about my cat.
obedience
She never misses a
to the
meal.
government or what society deems the latest omni trend.
You okay?
If you have done nothing wrong, you have nothing to fear.
I'm gonna have to call you back.
This is the language of tyrants.
Yuki!
Or just deeply naive people who still think the government have their best interests at heart.
Welcome back, everyone. This is episode 33 of The Lockdown, the Practical Privacy and Security podcast. Well, I've had almost a month off, I think, since the last episode, which has been very nice. For those that don't know, I managed to spend a couple of weeks back in the UK visiting friends and family, and it has changed since I've last been there, I must say. Cameras are everywhere. There always has been. I remember in the 90s, in the town where I grew up, they put these CCTV cameras at the top of what looked like lampposts, but these big poles, and they had pan and tilt and zoom, little windscreen wiper on the front of it. Now, this was in the 90s, bear in mind, so they've been a surveillance state or country for a very long time now. And then speed cameras started appearing soon after that, but now they have these average speed check cameras everywhere. So when you pass one camera, there'll be another one, let's say a mile away, and then it calculates your average speed between the two. So you could technically go past it at 130 miles an hour, park up, have a coffee, and then continue. I think Jeremy Clarkson did that on Top Gear many years ago. But what I've started to notice is just the volume of cameras everywhere. Everywhere in the airport, every street, it's pretty bad. Now, the reason I bring this up is having lived in the UK for half of my life and now been in the US for 9 years, I've noticed a trend. Almost like the UK has been the blueprint or the guinea pig before other countries roll out some of their measures, whether that be Australia or the United States. And in a way, I think the United States have lagged behind a bit with the UK, but have been close on its heels. I'm not talking in terms of technology innovation or anything like that, but really, if they look at the United Kingdom and see what they get away with from a government surveillance perspective, you can see where I am connecting some dots here. I may be completely wrong. That's just a trend that I have seen. Now, sure, the United States has NSA, and you've all heard of Edward Snowden and the leaks with NSA, and we know what the NSA is all about. Now, the UK also has GCHQ. That's the Government Communications Headquarters that are based in Cheltenham in the United Kingdom. And they are, if you've watched Enemy of the State, that's how I see them. They're just monitoring all communications. Now, it's interesting because I was talking to someone recently about amateur radio. They're a licensed radio ham, and they have the ability to send digital signals over a very weak signal, so 0.2 watts of power, and it can go a very long way. And obviously your voice wouldn't carry so much. You would barely hear anything because of how weak it is. But because it was digital, and they're only sending things like a call sign, but it got me thinking, I wonder if we could send encrypted text that way. But then I thought, well, GCHQ are certainly going to be monitoring every frequency and recording these digital communications, because you've heard of post-quantum encryption, and the idea is they can collect all this encrypted data, and then when quantum computers are capable of decrypting that in seconds, which would otherwise take many hundreds of years potentially, then obviously they've got that data in their back pocket. This is why services like Signal and other platforms are adopting post-quantum encryption, because the idea is they won't be able to do that. It's quantum resistant. But we're not going to go into quantum physics, not in today's episode. And it's safe to say that GCHQ and the NSA have an extremely close partnership. They're essentially married. They're like a married couple. And I'd say it's probably the closest intelligence sharing relationship between any two countries. And their collaboration really goes back to World War II. And as mentioned in a previous episode, this then expanded into Five Eyes, which is US, UK, Canada, Australia and New Zealand. Now, Snowden's revelations back in, I think it was 2013, it's a long time ago now, provided quite an interesting insight into this. They effectively divided up, or they still do, they divide up global surveillance tasks. So GCHQ has the geographic advantages for intercepting all Atlantic and European communications, while the NSA has much greater resources and technical capabilities. I would actually question that now. I think they're probably on par, to be honest. They have this Tempora program, which taps fiber optic cables, and they feed this data to the NSA. So Tempora is a GCHQ program. And the NSA has Prism and Upstream, and these are programs that share data back to GCHQ. So this really is Big Brother personified, I must say. Now, I think what was disturbing about Snowden's revelations was the third-party loophole. And, this really depends on your perspective, I guess. But since both countries have laws restricting surveillance of their own citizens, we all believe that, they can technically have the other country do the surveillance and then share the results. The NSA might have restrictions on directly surveilling UK citizens, but not GCHQ, so they can share that and vice versa. But I'm talking more around the social side of things. You might have seen clips on social media, if you have social media, or YouTube, where UK citizens have been arrested for posting the wrong thing on social media. And some of these trends that emerged in the UK then start trickling across other countries such as Australia, the United States, and other parts of the world as well. Now, I don't know if that's fact, that the UK is the blueprint or the guinea pig for such things. It just seems to be that way from my perspective. Now, in previous episodes, we've talked about Flock, this private company that puts cameras up all over the place. I've certainly seen many of them appearing where I live. And interestingly, I was in California a few months ago, and I saw this very nice Mercedes in front of me with a LCD digital license plate. And now it caught my attention. You can tell it was an LCD screen because of the colour of it. It looked very neat. And I initially thought, oh, that's very cool. Perhaps they have the ability to obfuscate the license plate when they go past these flock cameras. But I was very wrong. I'll put a link in the show notes and I'll tell you what I found out. Yeah, so this Mercedes was an AMG GT53. I don't know much about Mercedes, but I assume it's a very expensive car by the looks of it. Now, the plate was made by a company called Reviver. That's Reviver. And what was interesting is I thought this was for privacy. You could turn your license plate off if it's parked up in your driveway, that type of thing. But no, it is just an expensive gimmick. I don't know if you can turn it off, but it says on their website it's featured in Wired magazine and Forbes and CNET. I'm just looking at the site now, and it's called the R-Plate. It says your license plate transformed into a smartphone-controlled platform that connects your vehicle, perfect for individuals and families. And I'm thinking, what on earth is the use case here? Basically, it's a tracking system. I think they would like it to be a fleet management system. Imagine, if you had a company and you had a bunch of trucks, you could use these plates to track your fleet. Fair enough. I think this is a bit of an expensive way of doing it. It's currently only available in Arizona and California, hence I saw it when I was visiting California. But it just seems like a privacy nightmare. And the price starts at $899. And it says in-app registration renewal. So I believe you have to pay a monthly fee as well. That's right. It says 60 days service plan. After that, the basic essential service is $35 a year, but you have an in-app registration renewal of $39. You can clear a suspended registration, that's $25. I still do not see the point. It says without an active service plan, your R plate will display your license plate number, but will not offer any personalization or DMV features. So I believe it shows when your tax was paid. It's got the month and the date that expires on there as well. But it just baffles me why people would want such a thing. It's just another way that a private organization is tracking your location. They know what vehicle you drive. It's in a way, isn't it worse than Flock? You might as well, maybe Flock will start getting on board with this. You can install your own Flock camera inside your car to monitor you for bad behavior. It's just crazy. But the way things are going, people seem to be accepting this and wanting to do it. In fact, this Reviver plate, that the premium plan is $125 a year, and then you get everything included. But at $900 to buy the thing in the first place, I think it's insane. I thought when I first looked at it, this was something that cost $50 off Amazon, and you get a little button inside the car, you can press it and it obfuscates the numbers, which of course would be totally illegal. I'm not recommending such a thing, but the problem is the surveillance capitals that we live in are pushing us in that direction. So many of you have written in and said, I do not want to be tracked every time I come in or out of my neighborhood, and for that matter, anywhere in the town. I don't believe anymore I could drive into my local town, meet a friend for coffee and get back home without numerous cameras capturing me, doing license plate recognition, and obviously tracking my whereabouts. This is a living episode of Black Mirror. In fact, I remember back in 2016, the very year I moved to the United States, episode 1, season 3 of Black Mirror, I believe it was called Nosedive. Basically, they portrayed this world where everyone rates each other based on the social interactions using a smartphone app. But they also had these eye implants as well. So it's not just on the app. It sounds a bit like the Meta glasses. I haven't looked into those in much detail, but I'm sure many of you are aware that Meta have these glasses now with cameras built in, and it's uploading everything you see to Meta's cloud and AI, which is basically straight from this episode of Black Mirror. And the UK is heading in that direction as well. Now, this episode is primarily going to be based on my experiences in the UK and what I heard while I was there. But if you are from the US, Australia, or anywhere else in the world for that matter, take this as an early warning system of what could appear in your very own hometown or country very soon. Now, back to that Black Mirror episode, it really brilliantly showed how this system manipulates human behavior. You know, everyone was constantly putting on fake smiles and having superficial, pleasant interactions just to maintain their scores. A single bad day or a negative interaction would then spiral into losing access to basic services because your score dropped too low. All right, I might be getting ahead of myself a bit, so let's just take a few steps back. Now, when I left the UK to come to the United States, it was mainly for a career progression move. I had a significant opportunity at VMware. They paid for my relocation, and it really was the best thing I could have done at the time. Would I go back to the UK? Not a chance, not anymore. There were so many things, like little breadcrumbs, that sort of led me away. It's too much to cover in this episode, and beyond privacy. It's not just for privacy reasons. But one of those very small breadcrumbs was the UK TV licensing system. Now, bear with me, this might not be privacy related, but I think it's still an arm of the same system. So just to give you an overview, if you're not from the UK, I'll tell you what it is. They have something called a UK TV license. If you have a TV in your house capable of receiving live TV, so in the UK there's Sky TV, ITV, Channel 4, the BBC, then you must have a TV license. And if you don't have a TV license, and there's plenty of videos on YouTube, you can look this up yourself, you will get a knock at the door. There'll be a representative from a private organisation called Capita, accompanied by a police officer asking to come into your home so they can inspect your TV. This, again, sounds like an episode from Black Mirror, doesn't it? Now, let's just break this down, because I think this is a fascinating study into institutional contradiction and forced compliance. At its core, there isn't actually a TV licensing agency, not as a government body. It's merely a brand name used by the BBC to administer the collection of what is really, in essence, a tax on the UK population. Now, the BBC contracts their work out primarily to Capita, and they do everything from marketing to payment processing with them. However, when Capita employees knock on doors claiming to be from TV licensing, they're technically correct, I guess, but it really is stretching the truth. They're giving the impression that they represent some official government agency. And really, this is deliberately misleading. They are in reality a private contractor working for a quasi-public corporation. Now, the legal framework is a bit strange as well. Under the current UK law, you must have a TV license if you watch or record live TV on any channel, not just the BBC. And just so you know, this money collected, this tax, goes to the BBC. It doesn't go to any other TV channel. So if you use BBC iPlayer for any content, you still need a TV license. Now, you certainly don't need a TV license for Netflix or Amazon Prime or YouTube. And the majority of people that I've spoken to in the UK do not want to pay the TV license. They don't want this tax and being forced to pay it. Now, you could even own a TV and just use it for gaming or jellyfin. We've talked about that before. You still get knocks on the door. Now, if the BBC are receiving all the funds, why is it then that even if you only watch, say, ITV, who are a commercial channel, they pay through advertisements like they do here in the US, or Sky Sports, they have a subscription, why do you still need a TV license? Now, I actually liken this to a cartel. Now, bear with me, I'll get there in a moment. So first off, the legal mechanics of this, and really this is the question over, is this extortion or not? Now, Parliament creates this law requiring a license, designating the BBC to collect the fee, and then the BBC contracts private companies, in this case Capita, to do the dirty work for them under this brand of TV licensing agency. Now, I actually think this is legalised extortion. Capita's tactics include implied threats about prosecution when they have zero evidence that you're watching or recording live TV. They suggest that they have detection capabilities. In fact, I found an old recording from the 80s of one of these ads. I'll play the audio now, but I'll also put a link in the show notes so you can watch for yourselves. Now, this was in the 80s and the 90s.
You're about to see somebody caught breaking the law. We know exactly where he is. We know exactly what he's doing. In fact, we know that right now he's in his living room, watching television without a license. Now we're going to prosecute him, and he'll be looking at a £400 fine. Don't break the law. Get a TV license.
This was pure fear tactics, which I must say seems to be straight out of an episode of Black Mirror. But it's mandatory, and there are criminal penalties if you don't pay. So if you don't want to watch the BBC and you just want to watch Sky and you pay a subscription, you still have to pay a TV license. It's ridiculous. Now, because of their scare tactics by these Capita employees, many people just oblige and pay the fee anyway, or they might let them in through the front door. But you should know, Capita employees, they're a private company, have no legal powers. They cannot enter your home without permission, despite what their threatening letters might imply. They will title their letters with things like investigation opened or enforcement visit scheduled, that type of thing. Again, pure scare tactics. But this is what's creating this surveillance-like environment that really does feel like something from George Orwell's 1984. You must register if you don't need a license, so then they can maintain this list of addresses that they can send investigators to. They rely on the fear and confusion that you have to pay such a thing to enforce it. Anyway, why do I think this is a cartel? Well, I think what essentially emerges here is something with cartel-like characteristics. So first off, market division. This system creates clear territories. The BBC gets all this funding, but they can't sell advertising. You'd think the funding would upset the other TV channels such as ITV and Channel 4, but they get advertising revenue and don't have to compete with the BBC for that revenue, so it benefits them. Sky gets subscription revenue for premium content. You have to have a TV license. If it was optional, people might think, well, I don't want Sky. I'll just watch Netflix. Now, I've just looked up the cost, and it says it's £174.50 per year. So that's nearly $200 a year that you have to pay. Otherwise, you get criminal charges against you. Now, what I found ridiculous as well, the BBC can't advertise, but they fund their programming and all their TV shows through this license. But guess what? We see this in America because BBC World can commercialize it, and then it's sold to Netflix or other studios and channels. So we end up seeing it anyway. So I'm sure they're pocketing twice. The whole thing is just a scam, in my opinion. Now, I just wanted to get that one off my chest because when I speak to most of my American friends, they do laugh and chuckle when I say you have to have a license to have a TV in your home. It is ridiculous. But let's just move to this next layer of control. And this is really the core essence of where I'm going with this. You might have heard, and if you haven't, I'll give you an update now, that the UK is introducing a digital ID system called the Brit Card. So if you think the TV license is Orwellian, then wait till you hear this. So they're presenting this as a voluntary, of course it's voluntary, you don't have to do this, convenience for accessing public services and providing your identity online. So it's going to make your life easier. It just sounds great, doesn't it? Well, that's the sales pitch, that they can enhance security and reduce fraud and make it easier to access public services and that type of thing. Now, what they're actually building is a centralized, state-controlled digital identity system designed to link everything. So that's your finances, your medical history, your travel movements, social media activity, and potentially this digital trace of your daily life. So every visit to the doctor logged, every payment tracked, every website visited recorded. You've heard about this ID requirement to access social media. The UK have been pioneering this idea that you've got to present your ID. Well, first off, who is storing that ID? Whether it's social media or some random website or a game, video game, whatever it is, do you really trust these people to securely store a copy of your ID and in fact delete it? We just hear time and time again that they actually fail to do so. I certainly don't trust that. We're just going to have a frenzy of data breaches. And if you are a criminal, you're going to use the IDs that were lost in those data breaches in the first place. So all it does is puts everyone at risk. Let's say there's an online video game. I won't mention any names, but you have to be 18 to play it, for example. It could be a gambling site, whatever it is. There are hundreds of examples. And because of these government requirements, you have to upload your ID to gain access. Then they get breached. Everyone has a breach. There's one every single day. And then everyone's IDs, passports, driving licenses is in this data breach. Now, as a criminal, if I want to commit fraud, am I going to use my own ID? Absolutely not. Don't be ridiculous. I'm going to obtain one of these breaches and then use an ID of a law-abiding citizen. This is where it's going to lead us. And this is where it gets even more interesting, or certainly terrifying. The Bank of England has also been developing a digital pound for years. This is a digital currency that's linked to a digital identity. So imagine if your ID gets flagged, maybe you said something online that is considered fake news or misinformation or whatever it may be. Maybe you attended a protest. You could just be walking past a protest. In fact, I was in London recently. I don't know where the protests are happening. I'm not on social media. What if I just got caught up in this invisible net that I talk about a lot? Whatever it is. But now suddenly I can't access my own money. My bank account gets frozen through some legal process. It just stops working. Now, if they're tracking our purchases, what if they think, oh, we've been purchasing too much fast food? You need to stop payments to that because you're going to get overweight. Oh, your purchases are increasing the carbon footprint. You bought too much gas for your car. I don't know, whatever it is. This is where it's going. Now, this goes back to the episode called Nosedive, Black Mirror, Season 3, Episode 1. You must watch it because this is exactly what is happening. Now, you all know better than anyone, the whole nothing to hide argument is nonsense. Now, I've always said, it's not that we don't have anything to hide, but we have a huge amount to protect from identity thieves and ransomware groups and criminals and cartels, if you want to put it that way. We are losing the right to conduct our daily life without seeking permission from bureaucrats, without every transaction and movement being logged in some government database, and without access to basic services being dependent on compliance or some sort of social score. This is what's so terrifying. In fact, one of the ways a government official was trying to sell this idea is they said, We can even have your supermarket reward points tied to this ID card. So one card for everything. Yeah, great. So, that's a way they can track everything. Now, I don't see the TV license and this digital Brit ID card as two separate issues. I think they're both sides of the same coin. The TV license has showed us that you can create a legally enforced cartel using private companies to use threatening tactics and enforcement, making people essentially feel like a criminal for owning a TV. It's crazy. And it normalized the idea that you have to get permission to receive information. They're going to make this voluntary. But if it becomes so inconvenient to live your day-to-day life without one, what are people going to do? They're just going to comply. We all know that people prefer convenience over privacy. I happen to love being on an always-on VPN. And yes, it's irritating when I try and get to a certain website. In fact, I tried to pay my vehicle property tax the other day, and it said I was blocked because I'm on a VPN. It's ridiculous. So I just went to the local coffee shop and did it there. But the point is, I'm not going to trade convenience for privacy ever. This is my standard bar that I've set for myself. This is the norm. But if nobody fights back, this will become a societal expectation. But isn't that the real danger? It's not the system, but the normalization of control, this acceptance of surveillance, this gradual redefinition of freedom that we're trading for convenience. We are literally sleepwalking into this Orwellian digital age, and it might get to a point of no return. Who knows? Now, I hope this never comes to the United States. Otherwise, perhaps I should move to, Bali in Indonesia. I heard that's a nice place to live. And for many of us, we can't just leave the country. There's a lot of listeners I know in the UK. You can't just pack your bags and go to Indonesia. Now, I'm sure I'll get some emails now saying that Bali has some of the worst privacy laws in the world and they're just as bad. And you're probably right. I've not looked into it. I say that in jest. But this is the point, isn't it? Is what do? We do have to fight back and not just give in. All right. A history lesson for everyone. I've been doing some research. Now, whenever I say that, my wife says, oh no. But this is the result of it. And it didn't take me long. So don't take this too seriously. This is all of 2 minutes of research. However, there has been a timeline of control throughout human history. If we go back around 10,000 years ago, this was the agricultural revolution. And us wonderful humans invented the whole concept of land ownership. But then surplus of food and crops, but also things like weapons and other things, created ruling classes. So the basic formula here was if you control land, you control food. And if you control the food, you control the people. Now, around 5,000 years ago, writing systems were primarily used to track property and debt. I'm just imagining the scene of Harry Potter of Gringotts and all those strange bankers. Anyway, I digress. Standing armies enforced ownership. And then we have organized religions legitimizing these rulers. So 500 years ago, global land grab. Everything started to become privatized. Labor for pay, for wages, became mandatory for survival. Now, 150 years ago, so this is becoming more recent now, the industrial capitalism came about. Mass urbanization, company towns, clocking in for work in the factories. Productivity started to be monitored constantly. And this is where you expected to turn up at work at 8 or 9 a.m. and work 8 hours, or probably in those days even longer, and then clock out. Then 50 years ago, much more recent now, we developed credit scores, electronic banking, economic behaviour started to become tracked. And then more recently, so in the last 20 years or so, social media, smartphones, all equating to digital surveillance. Voluntary surrender of data, but it's really the you have to opt out. You opted in by default, isn't it? Behavioural predictions and manipulation. This is happening far more than most people realise. And then what are we going through right now? Digital IDs that we talked about in the UK. India has the similar thing. China has their social credit. central bank digital currencies. We talked about this UK digital pound. Now every transaction is becoming visible. These governments want to know everything you spend your money on. And then we have artificial intelligence, we have AI and machine learning, the two distinct areas, but these are analysing all of our behavioural patterns. Again, I'll put this in quotes, voluntary, but practically mandatory if you want to survive in today's digital age. Now, here's my prediction over the next 20 to 50 years. Biosurveillance will become normalised, monitoring of our health, of course, for our safety. Predictive pre-crime systems. This is the Minority Report, but I've seen, again from the UK, videos of police officers asking people to leave public areas because they predict they could be there with the intent of committing a crime. Then we've got this geofenced movement. So whether it's for the climate or pandemic justification, it doesn't matter what it is. But the lockdown, not in terms of this podcast title, but in terms of the pandemic, was only one example. Now, this is an area of control which I think will surface again. Neural interfaces. These will probably become voluntary again at first. Look what Elon Musk is doing with this brain interface. I'm not sure what they call it. Neuralink, I think it's called. And I think property ownership could collapse even further. Most people will own nothing, and a subscription model for everything. And the reason I bring these predictions up is I'm seeing a pattern. Each step really feels quite logical given the previous generation. What's accepted as normal, then the next generation accepts the next wave of surveillance. And we are in the era of surveillance. I suppose just as the peasants of the medieval times were freed from the land into wage labour, and freed I put in quotes, we're being freed from privacy into convenience. We don't have to worry about our safety anymore because Big Brother is watching. Now, I know this sounds like a science fiction novel or a conspiracy theory, but given the patterns of the past, you have to ask, is this not the reality we are building for ourselves? Now, let's just lighten the mood a bit and talk about other news. I don't have a lot on the privacy front. As I say, I've taken some time out. I was starting to feel a bit burned out with so much going on. I have many projects on the go, which really is a personality flaw of mine. I like to do many things, but I'm very creative. So one of the things I love about this podcast is the creative aspect of it, hence my very strange intros. I hope some of you enjoy those. If you don't, feel free to let me know. So going back to my trip in the UK, it wasn't all surveillance and hiding from cameras. It was actually very nice. The weather in July and August is very good, by the way. So it was a very nice break and something that I very much needed. Now, going forward, I'm probably not going to do a weekly episode anymore. I'm going to target one a month. Now, there may be occasions I do more than that, but this is going to give me time to focus on my other projects. And if I do a weekly podcast, that means my evenings and weekends are pretty much consumed creating this content. So switching this to monthly will give me that time to focus on some of my other projects. One of which, by the way, is my open source intelligence, defense and security framework, or ODSF. You can check that out at odsf.psysecure.com. That's PSY, secure.com. And still, as of yet, I do not have a PDF. I'm being very cautious here. I've had a number of people reach out to me, so I am talking to individuals about this and how to implement this in organizations. But just to be clear, look what we do as individuals for our personal privacy, for us and our families. Well, this is for companies and organizations, from small to large enterprises. It does not matter. But it's not a framework that I would suggest an individual picking up and implementing, because it's quite extensive and really applies to organizations and businesses. But hey, if you want to try and adapt it to your personal life, then go for it. Now, because I have had a nice long break, I have been absent from the Matrix community, but I see it has still been thriving and there's lots of active discussion. This is the benefit of this. You don't need me in there. In fact, I'm just diving in and out from time to time. We've got 128 members as I look now, and you can join that. If you look in the show notes, there's a link to each room, And you can also access that from my website, scisecure.com. So please do come and join the Matrix community. Download the Element client, or any client for that matter, but Element is the one I would recommend. Now, I've probably missed a ton in the past few weeks, so I'm not going to scroll back. In fact, it's saying I've got 207 unread messages in general alone since I last logged in. So I'm going to have to just catch up over the coming weeks in there. But that's one way you can get in touch with me. The other way is you can email the show, which is lockdownpodcast@protonmail.com. So if you have any questions that you'd like me to answer in future episodes, feel free to drop me an email. It's got to a point where I cannot respond to every email, but I do try. And if I don't respond, and it's something you really want to get an answer from, feel free to just email me again. Persistence sometimes pays off. But as I say, I get so many messages now that it's very difficult to reply to every single one. Now, I also want to thank those of you that are supporting this show on Patreon. You don't know how much that means to me. This is really evidence to me that this show does have meaning for at least some of you out there. You actually get some benefit from it. Sometimes, just like in today's episode, I might just be rambling and just speaking top of mind. Other times I do go in much more depth and sometimes into more technical areas as well. But the fact you're supporting the show through Patreon really does mean a lot, because it helps obviously pay for the hosting costs, but also the time it takes. And it's quite a significant amount of time that I put in. So if you're interested in supporting the show or even becoming a free member on Patreon, that's an option too. You can head over to patreon.com/the lockdown. Or again, you can just click the link in the show notes. Now, with that, I'm going to go and watch The Conjuring: The Last Rite. I love horror movies. If you like horror movies, let me know and we can talk about that as well. But yeah, I'm going to watch that. It's out in the movie theatres, so it's going to be fun. And of course, I've paid for it under an alias name using a privacy.com card, and I have a very special email address just for the movie theatre. Now, I'm sure as I walk into that movie theatre later today, my face is going to be on camera, my biometric information is going to be stored and then sold to the government. So what can you do? But anyway, I will enjoy the movie. And with that, I look forward to speaking very soon. Keep the emails coming in. Stay safe out there. Don't give up on privacy. The convenience isn't worth it. Trust me. Talk very soon.